Hello and welcome to MSEM coverage for Grand Prix Z. This is Caillou, and today we're going to be watching the round 1 match between Fifth, who is on Jund, and Sakon, who is on Americats, which is a Jeskai tempo deck. So if you're new to the format, you may be wondering, what is MSEM? So MSEM, which stands for Magic Set Editor Modern, is a non-rotating format made up entirely of custom sets. And this is for our monthly tournaments, GPs, which are 4 rounds of Swiss, followed by a top cut for everyone who has 1 loss or less. So both players keeping it 6. David leading with a Wayfarer's Shrine, which is essentially pay 1 life, fetch any basic in your deck. It's a staple of our mana base. Unfortunately, with Wayfarer's Shrine, the drawback of Wayfarer's Shrine is not being able to find our typed duels. We have shock fetches, which let you reliably grab those. So having Wayfarer's Shrine instead of other fetches can be bad when you're trying to reach your mana in a 3-color deck. Meanwhile, Fifth is going to turn 1 shock fetch Duress, revealing Rogar's Frenzy, Monument to the Fallen Man, and Union Rail. You probably grab Monument to the Fallen Man. Yeah, because this card is a house. It essentially makes creatures cost 1 more, but allows you to break parity by tapping it to put a creature with CMC 2 from your hand onto the battlefield. And since Fifth is on like a Jund style deck, which has lots of creatures, that tax effect is really damaging. Also, the only other legal target was Rogar's Frenzy, which does stuff out of the grave anyways. So no blue yet, so I think David could have cracked the Wayfarer's Shrine and then cast Union Rail, but I think is holding up Rogar's Frenzy. I don't know if I agree with that, because playing Union Rail and then next turn playing Rogar's Frenzy makes a lot more sense to me, because then you get a construct token off of Union Rail Strikebreaker. For those of you who don't know, Union Rail Strikebreaker is basically just a blue Young Pyromancer. Oh, so on end, David is not going to get a red land, is instead going to get a blue land, presumably to play Union Rail this turn. Maybe David was holding up the Wayfarers just in case Fifth cast like a Warfield Excavator, so David could kill that on end. Instead, David plays a shock fetch, probably going to find a red land here. And with this, David is in a pretty good place, has access to all 3 of his colors. And since Fifth hasn't cast anything, Fifth passed, which is interesting to me. Oh, and tapping 3 for Miyoga Firebird. This is basically our format's version of Arclight Phoenix. It was actually interestingly designed before Arclight Phoenix was released, I think around 2 years before that. But essentially, it's a 3/2 flying haste, must attack each turn, and you can recur it when you cast your 3rd instant or sorcery spell a turn. Fifth does have mana up, so it's probably thinking, I'm not sure what Fifth has at instant speed. Does Fifth have like Memento Mori? Let's look at his list. Yeah, Fifth has Exit, Memento Mori, and Obliterating Blast at instant speed, all of which kill this Phoenix. Obliterating Blast would be the best because it exiles the creature, and that prevents the Firebird from being recurred. So, oops, I think we missed what happened there. Yeah, so Fifth used Memento Mori, which is essentially an edict. So not the best removal that Fifth could have there, but it's still pretty solid in just buying Fifth a turn. Not having any green here does hurt though, because I feel like some of Fifth's best haymakers are in green. Okay, Wayfarer's Shrine will help though. We'll be able to search for a forest. But not cracking it, instead of tapping 2 for Reprising Bard. Yeah, Reprising Bard, grabbing back Memento Mori, or Duress, both, either works, but no, grabbing back Memento Mori. And Memento Mori has the second mode of being able to exile a graveyard. So this is good because it basically makes a Reprising Bard into a Rattlesnake. If David kills it, then in response, Fifth can exile David's graveyard and take out his Phoenix. But David just passes, doesn't even play a land. Fifth playing another shock fetch, kind of going deep on the mana base. I don't know if I agree with playing this untapped unless Fifth has a 4-drop here, or maybe let's look at Fifth's list real quick. Could be playing Mukeef into hold up exit mana, or Mukeef into Duress, or probably sorry, you would probably, if you had Duress, you'd do it the other way around, Duress into Mukeef. It could be a Snowfield Mother, or it could be play one of Fifth's many 2-drop creatures into hold up 2-mana interaction. Let's see though. First, just going to be swinging for 2 damage with Reprising Bard. And I guess David will take that. Doesn't care too much about taking 2 at this point in the game, and I think probably has interaction for whatever Fifth's about to do that Fifth wants to hold up. Ooh, interesting. So before damage, Fifth plays Aguri, who is essentially has Deception, which you can think of as ninjutsu. Enters the battlefield tapped and attacking, and what this does is Fifth now deals 1 more damage to David, exiles Graveyard with Memento Mori, and over and above that, gets to essentially Thoughtseize David here. This is a huge play. And the reason that Fifth is able to cast Memento Mori here is because Reprising Bard, when it enters the battlefield, you essentially exile an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, and when Reprising Bard leaves the battlefield, you can cast a copy of it. So yeah, I think Fifth is just going to exile David's graveyard, not going to mess with that Phoenix. So yeah, chooses the exile mode of Memento Mori, and then gets to Thoughtseize David. Rogars, Sandscatter, Union Rail. Oof. So I guess David can just he'll lose one of these cards, probably Union Rail, I think here. But then can just Rogars the Aguri. And then next turn, hold up 3 mana. We'll have enough mana to either Rogars another threat, or use Rogar's exile mode from his graveyard to create tokens. So yeah, okay. Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, okay. I was about to say Sandscatter should probably be saved for larger threats like Snowfield Mother, which Rogar's doesn't cover. And also getting Rogar's into grave this turn matters to be able to have it up next turn. But yeah, taps out for Rogar's Frenzy, killing the Aguri. Fifth still does have 2 mana up though. So main 2 cracking the Wayfarer Shrine, and I'm assuming going to be cracking the other fetch as well. So yeah, grabbing 2 green lands, tapping out for a Warfield Excavator here. Or could be another Reprising Bard. Okay, it is another Reprising Bard. This time probably grabbing, yeah, I was about to say, this time probably grabbing Duress, since another Memento Mori wouldn't really matter. And Duress is live. It hits everything in David's current hand. And yeah, David just once again going to end. Doesn't really have to mess with this Reprising Bard. If Fifth decides to just attack with Reprising Bard, depending on what David's if David isn't really afraid of what Fifth's going to drop, or like if David doesn't have counter magic, can in response to Fifth attacking, exile Rogar's Frenzy from his graveyard, create 2 1/1 red elemental tokens, block Reprising Bard with one of them, get Duress, but I think actually depending on what David drew, might want to keep Sandscatter. But oh no, I think this is Mukeef mana, or it could be Onyx Ritualist. But I don't know. Yep, there it is, Mukeef the Grim. So, pretty good. Yeah, and minus 2ing Mukeef instead of plus 1ing. Returning a Guri, or minus, so it's minus 3. So, getting to Thoughtseize David once more. And David drew into another Rogars. That's crazy. Yeah, so I think Fifth's play here is probably just take Sandscatter. Yeah, I think you just take Sandscatter here, because David is going to have Rogs no matter what. I guess if Fifth is scared of getting burnt out, because Fifth is going to take 2 more from the Aguri trigger, and then 2 more Rogs at face is scary. Okay, so taking Rogars instead of Sandscatter. So probably for that. And the problem is that in response to attacks here, David can just go make Rogs tokens, block Reprising Bard dies, take 3 from Aguri, but doesn't really care about that. On end, Aguri gets exiled, and then David has a Rogs token to be able to attack Mukeef with. So David is in a really good place here. Unless Fifth decides to not attack, or sorry, even if Fifth decides to not attack with the Reprising Bard, David can swing out next turn at Mukeef with 2 Rogs tokens, and then potentially, just kill Mukeef, basically. So Fifth swinging out, and in response, David is going to create Rogs tokens. And is blocking the Aguri, but not the Reprising Bard. I don't know if I agree with this play, because I think Duras either grabs Sandscatter or Rogars. Rogars you don't really care about because you can cast from grave. Sandscatter kind of sucks. But I guess in response, David can next turn, David can attack Mukeef. So main 2, Fifth played a Shock Fetch untapped. Notably, Fifth has only 1 land left in hand, or sorry, 1 card left in hand. So this is either a bait to pretend to have Obliterating Blast or Exeunt, or Fifth genuinely only has 1 of those. Anyways, on his turn, David is just going to attack Mukeef, killing him, and then holding up Sandscatter plus Rogar's Frenzy. Even though Reprising Bard is more of a clock than the Elemental token, Fifth being on 9 life plus David having burn makes it so that the clock is very much in David's favor right now. So on end, Fifth is grabbing a Crumbling Precipice with the Shock Fetch. Didn't play anything, so could just be saving Obliterating Blast for like a more hefty threat than a Rogs token. Okay, so tapping 2 for Warfield Excavator. This is really good. David does have the Rogs Frenzy for it though, or Sandscatter if David wants to save Rogs Frenzy for face, which is a distinct possibility. Tapping 3, interesting, for Mindstorm's Eye. Okay, so Mindstorm's Eye is basically Bolt plus you discard your hand and draw 3. So Mindstorm's Eye, so discarding Sandscatter kind of sucks because if Fifth ends up top decking, let's say like another Warfield or a Snowfield, it'll probably feel bad. However, discarding Rogar's Frenzy is really good because now David has access to another set of elemental tokens. And just refilling his hand can't feel bad either. And it finally hits that 4th land drop, tapping 2. Here comes a Seeker of the Way. Prowess gains lifelink, you know how it be. And much better clock. And I think, okay, so on end, Fifth is tapping for Obliterating Blast on the Seeker, and exile it, but now Fifth is down to top decking has no cards in hand. Like Jund is supposed to be like a really like grindy mid-range deck where you kind of just outvalue your opponent, but the problem is David is just having so much more value out of his cards with the with Rogar's Frenzy. Also, interesting play. David is going to opt in response to Obliterating Blast, maybe hoping to run into another cantrip so that he can save Seeker of the Way with the Prowess triggers, but doesn't get it. So Seeker of the Way gets exiled, and it's a tense moment here now because Fifth has, I think, much more impactful top decks than David, but it all comes down to luck of the draw. So Fifth attacks with a Reprising Bard. David is going to block with the Rogar's token. Doesn't really care because he has access to more Rogar's tokens. And Duress will let us see what's in David's hand. And Reprising Bard and a Myoga Firebird. No legal targets. And Fifth doesn't play anything else. Signals to me that Fifth probably has like top decked another removal spell. David, though, tapping 3 for Myoga Firebird can attack. I don't see, for exactly this reason, I don't agree with playing Myoga Firebird over Reprising Bard there. Obliterating Blast will exile the Phoenix, but I think playing Reprising Bard, grabbing Rog's Frenzy might have been the right play. Even though you generally want to have Rog's Frenzy in the graveyard to be able to create tokens, David had 2 of them engraved there. And then getting to essentially bolt Fifth for using removal on his creatures would have been really good with Fifth sitting at a 9 life. And David not even okay. David just going to end. I guess David has probably drew into interaction, and so yeah. Okay, so on Fifth's end is going to create Rog's tokens, and Fifth is like this is. It's really looking like Drago versus Drago, even though it's tempo versus a mid-range deck. Oh, so whoops. David showing the wrong card there. I showed that he has a Scorch, but meant to play a Myoga Firebird. And is going to tap 1 for Scorch, hitting Fifth in the face. David swings out for another 5. So Fifth is dead on board next turn, and I don't know what Fifth. I think Fifth's only out here is Snowfield Mother, or 2 removal spells. Fifth could have Exeunt plus Obliterating Blast, but nope. Just has 2 lands and a Memento Mori, and that's game. David takes game 1 over Fifth. So let's look at sideboarding now. So on David's end, I think being on the draw probably means that David is forced into like a less aggressive, like probably can't interact as much, like with the Mariner skill, because counter spells probably won't be as good. So I don't think that Stall Fate and Spellstarter will be coming in. Same for Reconsider. Guiding Light in this matchup, I don't know. Fifth does not have enough to justify Guiding Light. Rising Riots, it is kind of a grindy matchup, so maybe. I'm kind of skeptical on Rising Riots in general, though, but it is a turn 1 play, so. And Shaldron's Rage as a wipe for Fifth's board could potentially work. It hits everything except Warfield Excavator that's attacked and Snowfield Mother. So I think maybe siding in 1 or 2 copies of Shaldron's Rage is a possibility for David. But I think David's main board suffices in general. So my predictions for sideboarding are potentially some number of Rising Riots and maybe 1 Shaldron's Rage. Nothing more than that. on Fifth's end, Leja's Greenblade, I don't think, other than Monument, David doesn't really have any like artifacts / enchantments to answer. And I think by the time David has like, you don't want Monument to ever like land on the field, and you don't want your answer to be to Monument to be a creature. I could see Leja's Greenblade coming in, but I don't think it's the right call. Natural State, on the other hand, probably as a one of, makes a lot of sense. Stand Unassailable, maybe. It's a threat which can only be answered by Sand Scatter and gaining life, as we see, like, David is really trying to play like a burn deck. Not burn like per se, but has like that tempo plan of like, I'm going to hit you in the face a bunch, and gaining 7 life versus that is essentially counter your next 2 bolts. So I could see Stand Unassailable coming in some number. It's probably a 4 of for the burn matchups, not so much this one, but I think it's still good here. Great Sable Stag, I think in tempo matchups is really good. I don't think that David really has anything. I guess protection from a Mindstorm's Eye is strong. Requires David to have Scorch, Rogs, or Sand Scatter to kill it. So it cuts off 3 of, also Mariner Skill. No, sorry, Mariner Skill doesn't affect it. Never mind. So it protects it from Mindstorm's Eye alone. Just Business, I think, to deal with Siguratam maybe, but I don't think that David's deck's heavy enough on blockers to justify bringing this in. I think Fifth is just going to hope to land creatures as an answer to Siguratam. And Antithesis. I think Antithesis does make sense here, given Reprising Bard, Strikebreaker tokens, and Rogs tokens. So my thoughts on sideboarding are some number of Stand Unassailable, Antithesis, and Natural State for Fifth. Okay, so both players are drawing their initial hands. I think that's Fifth keeping at... Okay, so Fifth keeps at 6. And Fifth is playing before... Wait, didn't David go down? Oh no, that was sideboarding. Never mind. So David kept at 7. And essentially has a 4-lander, Miyoga Firebird, Unquenched Greed, and Siguratam. So I'm surprised that Fifth is using Duress to grab Unquenched Greed. Like, I agree that Greed can like fix his hand a little bit, but I think grabbing the threat is much more important. I don't know, maybe Fifth has like a very creature heavy hand and therefore isn't very scared of Siguratam. Anyways, David's deck not having a play until turn 3 is definitely scary for him. Since David's aiming to play tempo, giving your opponent like 2 turns where they can just go ham, especially when you're on the draw, is huge. So David's just going to play a Shock Fetch and pass. So Fifth plays a red-black Shock Fetch untapped and just goes to end. So holding up Obliterating Blast or Memento Mori. One thing that Fifth actually could be doing is Fifth could grab could be like Fifth could be banking on David not realizing that he can fetch a green-black or green-red Painland with this Shock Fetch, and hoping that David could potentially, if David top decks Monument, David could play out Monument, and then Fifth could have, yeah, that's Monument, and Fifth could grab Degradation. This is the line I was thinking of. I mean, this is all assuming that Fifth has Degradation, or even cited it in the first place. Fifth is cracking the shock fetch on end. Let's see what he ends up grabbing. But Fifth just grabbing a mountain, so I guess the interaction that Fifth had was not degradation. Oh, does have a Nomad's Township on his own turn though. So degradation is still online, is still potentially online, boys. But no, just passing, going to end. And David top decking and resolving this monument is huge because it puts Fifth off their play so much. And I think Fifth is going to try and tap out. Okay. Saigura Tam does make sense. And the tokens are wrong here. These are supposed to be 1/1 cats. So David is swinging in for 3 right here. And Fifth takes it. On end, Fifth is going to Obliterating Blast Saigura Tam. Yup. And one thing about Monument is it is symmetrical. So David will have to pay 4 if David decides to tap out for Miyoga Firebird next turn. That is why running non-2-drops in a Monument deck can be a dangerous proposition sometimes. So Fifth tapping 3 for Reprising Bard, paying the 1 extra from Monument, and grabbing Obliterating Blast from Grave. Yep, strong play. So David tapping 2 for a Rogar's Frenzy or a Sand Scatter to kill Reprising Bard. Okay, just a Rogar's Frenzy. And then we'll take the Obliterating Blast to the face, I guess. So Rogar's being a way to create creatures that doesn't require casting them is really good to circumvent Monument. Anyways, David with his last mana is going to cast another Unquenched Greed. David's top decks have been really good because those are all top deck cards. We didn't see any of that in David's opening hand. And wow, playing another Shock Fetch. Okay, I guess if David has a third non-creature spell here, if David David did bin Miyoga Firebird with Unquenched Greed. If David does, this is an opt. Yeah, there's an opt. Miyoga Firebird comes back. And David swings for 3. Speaking of things that circumvent Monument, one of them is Aguri. So maybe Fifth was hoping to play Reprising Bard, hoping that David would tap out for Miyoga Firebird, and then next turn Fifth could play a land, Deception Aguri, and then use the Obliterating Blast to kill Miyoga Firebird. Instead, Fifth is going to have to 1-for-1 using Memento Mori. Fortunately, it doesn't exile, so David still has the opportunity of, if David has 3 more non-creature spells. But nope, David is going to hard cast a Miyoga Firebird from his hand, swing for 3. And this is putting constant pressure on Fifth to have answers. And Fifth does have 4 cards in hand, but is also on a 3-turn clock if Fifth doesn't top deck, let's say, a stand unassailable, or 2 lands plus a Snowfield Mother. Fifth tapping 3 for a Warfield Excavator and just going to end. So Warfield Excavator is good. Exiling cards from David's graveyard is doubly good. Because that means this could preclude David from being able to recur the Miyoga Firebird that Fifth killed with Memento Mori. It doesn't grow fast enough for it to be able to outrace David, though, unless Fifth has a stand unassailable in hand. Also missing. Ooh. Instead, David is going to Mindstorm's Eye the Warfield Excavator before it can grow next turn. Discarding another Monument and Saigura Tam. Discarding Saigura Tam definitely hurts. But yeah, I almost feel like I don't agree with I don't agree with that play. I'm finding, because I think that playing Siguratam and then plus wanting it puts fifth down to puts fifth down 5 life, and yeah, if fifth has like a stand unassailable, it gives you a faster clock. So yeah, casting stand unassailable is gonna gain 7 life and essentially go back to 13. And this is why, yeah, I think David should have waited to play Mindstorm's Eye. So yeah, I think Siguratam last turn into Mindstorm's Eye this turn on face would have been a lot stronger of a play. Though I guess the worry that actually no, I guess David's worry was that fifth would attack Siguratam with Warfield Excavator and kill it, but ooh, okay, so tapping Monument for to the Fallen Man for Reprising Bard, grabbing Rog's Frenzy. I don't think I agree with that, because I think you want to keep Rog's Frenzy in grave, and Mindstorm's Eye is a perfectly good grab unless David has like some really high impact cards in his hand. Tapping 2 for another Rog's Frenzy hitting face. And yeah, I think Mindstorm's Eye in this case, since you're just trying to burn fifth out, Mindstorm's Eye is a good way to draw into more burn too. Yeah, so David has the opportunity to create Rog's tokens at instant speed here, so that so fifth tapping 2 for another stand unassailable, going to just negate all the damage David did, go back up to 14. Has nowhere near enough to pay the coalesce cost, but stalling for time is good. And I'm interested that fifth. Oh, and that's. Oh, David has another Mindstorm's Eye, casting this one from hand. I'm surprised at fifth not cracking the shock fetch to be able to thin his deck a little bit and hopefully find more impactful things. David tapping the Monument for another Reprising Bard. Really better. Yeah, okay, this time grabbing a Mindstorm's Eye. And is going to swing for 5 right here, unless David has like another Miyoga Firebird or something. Tapping 3 for. God, if this is another Mindstorm's Eye to face, I'm going to scream. Nope, this time it's a Siguratan. So, whew. Fifth, and I guess this time David is doing the +1, which gives the creature haste and vigilance. So swinging for 4, 6, 9, putting fifth down to 2 life. And I don't think, I think there's literally no way for fifth to win here, because even if a fifth, okay, actually I think if fifth has double stand unassailable, then fifth can win. But nope, fifth top deck Kitsuki with no creatures. Had a Snowfield Mother in hand, which would have been the stabilization that fifth needed, but the taxation effect on Monument stopped that. Oh man. But yeah, so that's game. David takes it 2-0 over fifth.